Hi, you Wallace Page Flowers. Thank you all for tuning on in. I wanted to do this video a long time ago. This video relates to the LGBTQ population, those that identify as androgyny, those that were born intersex with both male and female parts. Also, those that are just, trying to figure out why they are the way they are in terms of being asexual and not wanting to have sex with individuals or just being romantic with individuals, because they feel complete within themselves already. So I wanted to make this video. It's a compilation video of different master teachers, Sevan, Bomar, the Real Merkabah, and 13 Signs Astrology. Their explanation on same-sex relationships, their research done on homosexuality, the LGBTQ population, the indigo children, the crystal children, and even extraterrestrials as it relates to androgynes and the LGBT population and sex in general, same-sex relationships or situations in general. Because a lot of the things in the conscious community, a lot of the explanations in the quote-unquote conscious community can be very toxic because it doesn't go into the whole all is self perspective, because all is self in general. And it doesn't have a wide range of why these individuals are the way that they are and why they are, a lot of them, born that way. And it could, a lot of it could be because of the Kundalini energy already activated. And so a lot of them don't talk about that. And so I feel really glad to be able to put this all in one video so that you all can see it. There should be no reason as to why you don't feel good about yourself, as to why you feel lonely, as to why you feel out of place, because let me tell you, you're not out of place. A lot of the people that explain or just fail to embrace you, they don't know how to, they don't know this information. A lot of them aren't even aware of themselves. And so this information is very important for you to, lock into your consciousness and your subconscious so that you can begin to be liberated. Today is Saturday, Crown Chakra Day. Wearing black and violet, and actually today I have one Prince, which is interesting because we're talking about androgyny, and Prince was very androgynous. And in fact, I'm a Capricorn. Today is Saturday, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Capricorn is actually an androgynous being. Okay, not all Capricorns are androgynous, but it's an androgynous being. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and let all this play out for you all. Watch it all. All the videos are connected in some form, shape, or form. So take some notes. Very interesting stuff. Again, be yourselves, guys. Love yourself. Embrace everybody. All is self. Like, everybody is your reflection. Period, point blank. Okay? So just look at the content. If you all have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section. And, if you all have any insight as well, feel free to drop it as well, okay? Take care, guys. Enjoy the content.
Africa, Australia, Spain, New Zealand, places all over the world of cave art. Ancient cave art. We're talking about going back 10,000 BCE, longer than 9,000. Of, depictions of peace, animals. Not one of the depictions that they find in these Paleolithic cave art has any symbology of war at all. No depiction of war or anything that is related to war. Nothing but most of the cave arts is, animals, or they show, figures. And the oldest cave art that you find is nothing but women. Nothing but women. Now, in the 1960s, a man named James Millard found one of the oldest cities ever discovered, called Çatalhöyük in Turkey. Now, what they found in this city was that it was no signs of war. Again, no signs of war. No signs that they had to build any kind of fortress, that they had any kind of walls protecting the city. In fact, the houses that they lived in, as you can see in the depiction, look more like apartments. They lived close together. These people had no kind of social structure. They wasn't ruled by any kings or queens or anything like that. The closest thing to religion or any kind of ruler that we find is this figurine or this statue that they call the Great Mother. This is what they find there. They find this, in a lot of places. But there's no signs that there was any kind of war or anything. Everybody lived peacefully. They grew peas, they grew barley, they grew wheat, they grew almonds, they grew pistachios, and they raised sheep. No signs of warfare. Now we're talking about, this goes back 9,000 BCE, when they said that the world was basically filled of war. It wasn't safe to go anywhere. Everybody was living in fear, and kingdoms was fighting against each other. But here we find one of the oldest civilizations, Kaltahuyuk, where the people live in close quarters. It was they think it was a matriarchal society, but from the depictions that they find, everybody lived peacefully. Everything was fine. There's the bones when they dug up the bodies of the people, because they buried them like in the floor. None of the bodies had any signs of trauma or war. The people died peacefully. Some of the bodies they found had no skulls. That was symbolic of some kind of maybe some kind of ritual or something that they did with some of the skulls, but there was no trauma or no signs of any kind of war or any kind of violence in this civilization. Now understand, there has been a movement that has been going on for decades, for a very long time, that has been kept out of the public, kept out of the media, and a lot of people have no clue of this movement. It's a bunch of researchers, archaeologists, scientists, who have found civilizations all over the world of nothing but women. They have dug up figurines inside of these caves and inside of places all over the world where you find these figurines. Look at these, of nothing but women, all kinds of shapes and sizes. Women all over the place. When you go back far, when you start digging deep, you find nothing but women. Now, in the civilizations where men started to come on the scene, we find that it was matriarchal civilizations where the woman basically ruled. And the depictions show that the job of the men was they went out, they hunted, they actually watched the kids, everything was cool, but it shows that it was an equality there and that the man respected the woman. Now, we find this again in ancient Egypt. We know that the ancient Egyptians, the men worshiped the women as gods. But now, going back here, they have been found in these civilizations for a long time. A woman named Maria Gambutis, if any of you have seen her videos, she has been talking about this stuff for years. She's an archaeologist, and she has put out many books on all of the matriarchal societies that they are covering up. They called this woman crazy, said that she's some kind of feminist and this and that, but she has the proof. They can say what they want, but not just her. Other people have the proof. The archaeologists had the proof that there was nothing but women. I mean, it's so many depictions and figurines that they found throughout the world that show that at some point, long time ago, nothing but women was here. And then it's actually, I wish I had more time to get into this, so I might do a video on it later, but it's actually showing, it's almost a timeline where you can see where it's nothing but women. I mean, you can see the kind of things that they talked about and how they live. I mean, they drew this stuff, they depicted it. And when you see men start coming in the picture, what their role was, I mean, this stuff is everywhere and nobody is talking about it. The news media won't touch it, of course. Nobody wants to point this stuff out. But it's important and, where we're headed at, because everything is going to tie in together. So now in Maria's Gambutis books, she talks about all of these civilizations that they have found. Remember, she's an archaeologist. She has a team, they went around, they have dug up and found so many matriarchal civilizations and civilizations of just women. So many depictions of just, women interacting with women, lesbians. You get this whole big, anybody who's a lesbian, you get this whole put down of being a lesbian and this and that. That's all that went on in the ancient world. It was no men, so women got together with women, and they have depictions of them. We're talking about ancient depictions of women and women, because it was a natural thing. There was no men, so women got down with women. It's ancient, it's old. This is something that was taking place long before modern day society. It is a normal action, as Maria Gambudis points out in her book. Now, the thing is, why this is important, that they found all these matriarchal societies and all these civilizations of nothing but women. This is important because in all of the civilizations of just women, when they started to dig up the graves of the women, they find depictions, or they find that they worship snakes and serpents and birds. Serpents and birds. So here you go, the urea. You have a serpent, you have a bird on a double urea. Same thing, the double urea. You have a serpent, you have a bird. This is what they find in all of the graves of these ancient women. Not in the men's. When you dig up the men, it's nothing. And they find that it is replete throughout the ancient world in these civilizations of just women, that they was in some kind of communication, or that they worship these serpent gods. Researchers believe that these women was worshiping the serpent or the reptilian because of parthenogenesis. Now we know with parthenogenesis that they could reproduce without the aid of a male, and we know reptiles can reproduce without males. Now obviously these women was reproducing without men because there was no men around. So as I keep saying, you cannot get a man without a woman, period. Everybody begins life as a female. Now, men are basically a mutation of a female. That's all we are. What happens between the 6th to 8th week of pregnancy, you have the secretion of testosterone. It is this secretion of testosterone that causes the female to change into a male. So what happens is the ovaries drop and become testicles. The clitoris elongates and becomes a penis. It is the female skin gland that actually produces exactly the same as the male fertile seed. The skin gland is the source of female ejaculation. So females already have eggs, just like reptilians or birds lay eggs. Females already have eggs. Now we have been told that she cannot reproduce without the aid of a male fertile seed, but she already has the seed. So everything a man is and will ever be comes from a woman. So what makes you think anything that a man can give a woman, she doesn't already have? Now, we don't know exactly what happened for women to start secreting testosterone and start producing men. Some people say it has something to do with the moon or something to do with nature, but we really don't know what really took place for women to start producing men. And a lot of people think it was a need for something, that, nature required her to produce something more masculine to either fight or to hunt or what have you. But, we don't know it. But you can understand now why they will want to hide the history of, females, that they are the first here. Because everybody believed, and we know the ancient Egyptians talked about this, that the female could decide whether she would have a male or a female. The Egyptians talked about if a woman was on the spiritual level, she could produce without a male, but they could also decide if it's going to be male or female. So if the woman ever woke up and realized what she can do and who she is, she could basically birth the man out of existence.
The war for your mind is deep. It's really deep. See, I pride myself on bringing you information, but people don't realize that information is the basis of warfare. Information is the basis of warfare. What you know will determine how effective you are in combat. Your knowledge, totally. I mean, that will determine how effective you are in any type of war. And the people that run the Matrix, they know that certain information getting to certain people is deadly and dangerous. They know that. So, of course, they're going to have provocateurs and people to put out information to sway you, from the point. Of course they have to do it because they know real information. Like when real information presents itself, trust me, they know how to, they have their decoders. When I say they, the people that run the Matrix have their decoders. You know what I'm saying? And they have a way of knowing if you're really giving out real information. And once they find out you're giving real information, they're going to always monitor you. They're going to always monitor you. So that just comes with the territory. That just comes with the territory of being real. That's just what it is. So, and in 13 Signs Astrology fashion, in real fashion, in reality fashion, we're about to bring you another real topic. I want to talk about the metaphysics behind the homosexuality in today's crystal children and some indigo children. Now, let me first go ahead and lay a foundation for this topic. Now, it's a lot of people that are in an age group that are above me, like that's in an age group a little bit above me, that's in that age category that's about like 10 years above me and maybe a little bit younger. And they look at the indigo children and the crystal children and those children that was born in the 80s and into the 90s, and they tend to make this observation, and they say, you know, those children, they kind of seem like kind of weak. They seem like all of them end up turning out to be gay. Like how come this homosexual gay movement thing is so big? And people like that's a little bit older than me and the older generation, they want to know this stuff. You know what I'm saying? They really want to know this stuff. They're like, what's up with that? Like people ask me these questions all the time or whatever, and I'm like, I might cover it on YouTube, I might not, whatever. But I'm like, yo, I'm going to go ahead and cover the information because, I mean, it's basically what I've researched. I mean, it's what I found to be the truth. I'm not saying that it's the truth, but it's what I found to be the truth. And what I found to be the truth is really interesting when you study the indigos, but especially the crystals, though. Especially the crystals. Like I'm an indigo child, an early phase indigo child, actually. Came through a little bit early, actually. But I'm an indigo child. But when you start to study those crystal childs, those advanced indigo childs, and you start to look at their kundalini, and you start to study their sexuality, you're going to find out that these children are born with their kundalinis a lot of times activated by the age of 8, 9, 10 years old. Sometimes at early ages, 15, even 20 years old. That's kind of old to have your kundalini activated, especially to not know nothing of it. Now, this is what you have to remember. Somebody that's watching this video that may be a little bit older, that's like not really understanding about this whole homosexual so-called movement amongst the indigos and the crystal children, which are those children, to clear this up. Indigos basically are those children born from like the 80s all the way up to about 92. Those are your indigos. And after that, 93 all the way up to really 2008, 2009, even 2010, those are your crystals. And you got different levels of indigos and different levels of crystals. But those are essentially the years or whatever, so that you can classify crystals and indigos. Now, before I go into everything, I want to go ahead and explain to you how I classify that. Now, the reason why we classify indigos starting in around the 80s, the early 80s, is because of the shift. Now, the planet started to shift actually in the 80s. And people don't realize that. The planet, like when you talk about the shift, exactly what the shift is the planet is, the vibration of the planet is raising itself, or the frequency of the planet is increasing. That's the shift. So what happens is that those creatures and beings on the planet, if they want to stay on the planet and live on the planet, they have to shift and match the frequency of the planet. Now, prior to 1980s, according to my research and what I've been studying, prior to 1980s, I got a book called The Fifth Dimension that was written like in the 80s that talks about the fifth dimension. It talks about the shift. And that's where I'm getting a lot of this information from those people that love sources. So prior to the 1980s, the planet was on what's called it was basically vibrating at 7 megahertz. The planet was vibrating at 7 megahertz. But after like 1980s, scientists started to measure the planet, and what they found out is that the planet started to increase. The tone of the planet started to increase. The octave of the planet started to increase. And when the octave started to increase, this increased the vibration of things on the planet. And it went up. And like around 1985, 86, it went up to about from 7 to about 8 something. And then it went up from that point to like, it just keeps going up. See, now right now we're to a point where it's almost 13. So this just started. What you guys have to realize is before 1980, the planet never, basically since they've been measuring the frequency of the planet, which has been for about 100 years prior to 1980. So since the 1800s, the planet has never shifted as far as tone. It's been the same. But after 1980, what happened was a shift took place. A shift took place. Now, what does this shift have to do with homosexuality, RAIMHOTEP? I'm getting there. Just be patient with me. So the shift took place, and those particular children that were born after the 1980s and after that point are what you would call indigos and crystals. So like in 1980s, it went from like 1985, 86 all the way up to about 92. The frequency of the planet was 8.6. Then after 1993, it went up to like almost 9. You know what I'm saying? After 1993, and that's when your crystal children came through. So your crystal children came through on that second shift. So the earth has been shifting. Like, that's what I'm saying. People talking about some shift in 2012 and what's going to happen, and I'm freaking out and all of that. Look, people, think, use your brain. The earth has been shifting. You need to do your research. This isn't new. It's just you just not figuring out about it. They're using this 2012 event to educate you about this shift that's really been taking place since the 80s. Been taking place since the 80s, the shift. And these children that were born in it are now, we're adults now. The indigo children are now growing up. Some of us going through our Saturn returns and everything. And what happened was that these children that came through came from a different soul group. Actually, they were a more mature soul group. These indigos and these crystal children that are coming through are more mature than the beings that were on the planet prior to that. So beings that were born prior to 1980s or whatever, and those beings that are indigos, they got to keep in mind, some indigos did come through in the 50s, 60s, and 70s too now. You had some indigos come through early. But the majority of people, the majority of the indigos came through in the 80s. And it's a reason for that. That's because of the shift. So the majority of the people that were born before the 80s were what you would call younger souls. They were younger souls. The indigos and the crystal children are older souls. They're more mature souls. So that's when you get into soul groups. And the reason for that is because the indigos come from the times of Atlantis. The indigos come from the Atlantean times. And when I say they come from, I mean as far as their soul. They have not incarnated, most of them. Some of them came here doing research to prepare for the coming of the indigos to come back in the 80s. But no indigos were really, as far as mass majority of indigos, could not incarnate here until the 80s, since the Atlantean time. So they haven't been here since Atlantis. So this whole thing, that's why indigos are the way they are. They're reckless because this whole thing is new to the indigos. And with that came a lot of sexual tendencies that a lot of people don't realize. See, in Atlantis, you had multiple beings that lived in Atlantis. And I know I'm going to do a video on Atlantis, but I have to cover this here about Atlantis and explain this. So you had hermaphrodites, males and females that lived in Atlantis. You had multiple types of beings that were like, they were used to living together, you see, in Atlantis or whatever. So some of these beings had different types of sexuality. They had different types of sexuality. Some of them were hermaphrodites, which were males that may have had female parts. Then you had females that may have had male parts. Then you had some beings that were totally males. Then you had some beings that were totally females. Then you had other beings that were reptilian types. I mean, you had different types of beings, a lot of different types of beings, right, in Atlantis. So the types, so when you're thinking about that, those were the souls in Atlantis. So these souls are coming back now as indigos and crystal children from Atlantis. Same souls, right? Same type of sexuality. They're bringing all that sexual karma over with them. See, that's what I'm trying to explain. So what's homosexuality and these bohemian types of sexual acts that are going on right now with like girls wearing strap-ons. See, I know what's going on. You're not going to hear about this stuff from no other teachers because they're not going to talk about it. I know about the girls wearing strap-ons and girls kissing girls and the bad bitches and, you know, all of the stuff. Like, I know about the males, the male homosexuality, all of that stuff. I know what's going on, and I get the emails. People email me all the time and say, am I a demon because I'm a homosexual? Why do I feel like this way and all of that? Like, why do I feel this way? Like, I hear the stuff or whatever, and I get the emails, and I'm like, I'm going to address it, but I'm just like, okay, got to figure out how to address this. And I'm like, thought about it. I'm like, just address it. Just go ahead and put it out there. Like, basically put your research out there on it. So that's what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, not stepping on anybody's toes. This is not to knock you as a person, because I don't believe in like you're a sinner because you're homosexual, or you're a sinner because, like, they associate sin with sex, period. So anytime you having sex, damn near you sinning. Whether you have a heterosexual sex or homosexual sex, sex has always been associated with sin because they know that the power that's in sex. But like improper sex, when you're not educated, that's ignorance. Now that's ignorance. And certain things, certain sexual acts are unclean. They're not healthy. Certain sexual acts are just not healthy, and that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? And that's, you know, people aren't healthy or whatever. So certain things you shouldn't partake in with people if they aren't healthy. Just put it that way. Like, if you're a vegan and you're trying to be healthy and you're partaking in acts that aren't really clean with the person that's not really eating so well, it's like, I don't know about that. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to go ahead and say that. So a lot of these beings and these children, us indigos that came back, are, some of them were hermaphrodites, some of them were hermaphrodites. So now they're coming back. But this is the key right here, though. A lot of them are being born 9 and 10 years old with their kundalinis activated, like I was saying earlier. Kundalini's activated, right? So they're coming 9, 10 years old, Kundalini's activated, already knowing what sex is like. So this is why child pedophilia, all this stuff is tied into the Kundalini's been activated. These children are technically sexually active, you know what I'm saying, at a very young age, because they're being born with their Kundalini's activated. And what a lot of older people don't realize is, it's a lot of you out here maybe 50, 60 years old, you might be watching this video, you don't even got your Kundalini activated. You don't know what it feels like to have your Kundalini activated, like, so you don't know, really truly have not experienced sexual feelings really until you have your Kundalini activated or whatever. And the proper teaching of what to do when your Kundalini is activated was taught in Atlantis. See, that's the difference. They had mystery schools set up in Atlantis to teach the youth, the children, how to use the Kundalini energy. So they weren't going around screwing all willy-nilly.
So what's happening is that there is something that unites us all, okay? And this is from the black man, all of the white man, to the white woman, to the black woman, to the Chinese woman, to every single species that lives on the earth, even the animals, okay?
Right.
And this being, or this story, or, you know, just this world intense that unites us, was actually the ancient tradition that everyone was on, from Ireland all the way to West Africa, before the pole shift, okay? And then the pole shift is very easy to understand like this. If everyone is, let's say, in understanding of the mother, okay, which is really water, and they are tuned in with that, that's the lifestyle that everyone is living, everything is centered around that. What a pole shift causes is that all of a sudden, over a short gradual period, everyone will be tuned into the sun all of a sudden. So that so in a sense, the mother is the foundational teachings and happenings and things that we go through first. And then when there's a pole shift, it's deemed, okay, it's enough water for them. Now it's time for some fire. Let's bring in the sun. And then what happens is all the belief systems and the traditions and things, they all change. And that's how these societies work, is they basically go in successions of fire and water, fire and water. And what we're calling ancestors and what we're calling ancients are really the energies that are associated with bringing about these transformations. But they're not impersonal, meaning that these beings are more alive than we are, even, because they contain more of the genetics, more of the DNA, and more of everything that makes us us, that we still don't even really understand yet, okay?
Okay.
So I can only begin this story from the ancient Nomo traditions, the ancient Irish traditions, ancient Norse tradition. So in every single ancient tradition, you'll see them mention first the arrival in this world, of a being that was known as the twin. Okay, and this became to the Nomo, to the Dogon, the Nomo.
Okay.
And that this particular being was known to be androgyn, because androgyny in the physical reality is the sign of immortality. Okay, so just as everything happens on another level before it actually happens here, when it does happen here, it is basically a reflection of what was something else much further into other spheres. That makes sense to you, correct?
That makes sense, yes.
So in a sense of, instead of looking at it directly like, okay, hermaphrodite, maybe someone homosexual, maybe someone's a dyke, that's just too much brain job. Just look at it as the conversion of a being that is immortal on another plane. If they did appear in physicality, they would be androgynous. And the reason is because it's a statement saying that I don't need to go anywhere to reproduce myself. I don't need to go to anyone to reproduce myself. I can reproduce from myself. I am immortal. Right. And that's what you find in the ancient tradition, especially the Kemetan traditions, where they call them self-propelled beings. I like the term, but it means a being that basically can turn itself on, that can keep regenerating itself, okay? And this is also known as being parthogenic.
Right.
So this parthogenic being, also known, we'll just call it as the Nomo, which was a symbol for water, contained all of the DNA that we're looking at here on the planetary system. And so that also made its form quite strange, because it was like really a composite being. It had the DNA, or actually it's easier for me to explain the characteristics. The characteristics was generally because the male and female was in the same body, generally it was depicted that the head was also on the same body, which would be quite disturbing to look at for the concepts that we're into today. In addition, that the bottom half of this being, the reason why it was scaly, fish-like, or serpent-like, which this being later on became known as the rainbow serpent, is because it had a prehistory in the netherworld or in the ocean. Okay? And then the actual evolution process, meaning the next stage that's to come about, that this being was fused with the previous stage and the next stage. Now, all of what I just mentioned to you is not odd, because you will find a lot of beings on this planet now that are actually in between their phases of evolution or to their next level, right?
Right.
And in addition to that, to have two beings in one body is not odd either, because we're doing it now. And it's important to understand that this being, the Nomo, had achieved some level of balance within keeping both beings in the same body. But the being that it actually created did not, however, be able to achieve this balance and was actually primarily female. So first we have the Nomo, and then we have the first generation from the Nomo known as Leb, which is a female lioness. That this female lion, as far as an archetype is concerned, now this female lioness was androgyn, so could generate from itself, but was primarily female. And that's what the secret of the Sphinx is. That's what they're showing in Avatar in a very slick way. That's what the Rastafari is about. That's also what Britain is about, because at this point, when the ancestors, and they call this the second word, when these beings start being created, there becomes more of them, and this is what we call the ancestors. Like there's basically several of these lioness or wombs, and this became known as the seven sisters of the Pleiades. These lioness also had a cow-like zoomorphication, meaning that they also were symbolized by the cow and the cow goddess. So it looks to me as that when I see all the symbolism, because there was also a frog goddess, that anything that really reproduced, that these beings encompassed it. And what the animals really were are like the interpretation of that on the physical plane. So it's easier to look at the animals for their traits and their characteristics and then gain loads about what's going on with the ancestors, rather than looking at the animal as if it is the ancestor, because that'd be just like looking at yourself and imagining that what you're seeing in the mirror is the overmind and the whole massive state of consciousness, etc. That's not what you're seeing in the mirror. Right. So the next stage that happens here is very interesting, because what you find is that this androgynous being that's primarily female is the mother of all the species that live on the planet. And this being was known to be, because of what happened with us, the only cure for us to get us back to the stage that we should be in. And let me explain that. Because this being, known as Leb, is also Sophia. All these traditions are all the same. And what Sophia did is she created this being, which is given the term the jackal, which becomes the composite even for the new human body. But she creates this being from a word. Okay? And in ancient traditions, what is shown is really a flute. Okay? Unlocking the mystery that what the Tibetans were doing, and what even in this valley, what they knew about the tones and the vibrations, that a tone and a vibration can bring a being into life. Okay? Now, the way that this being is brought to life then is very different than the way that the Nomo bring beings into life. Like when the Nomo brought Leb, the female lioness / goddess, meaning even the Starbucks symbol kind of shows her. She's a mermaid in a sense. When they brought forth that being, it was already coming from beings who already knew how to create. So let's take a pause here and let me explain a little bit to you more about the Nomo. Now, the Nomo, they're responsible for populating the kind of worlds that you're in right now. And how they do that is they have several ships, but they're all moons. Okay? And this becomes very simple. This is why a lot of people were saying, oh, the moon is an artificial satellite, it's hollow, it's not real, whatever. And it's because the knowledge, and obviously they're still clueless to what's going on, but the knowledge shows from the ancient traditions that the Nomo's craft, the crafts that they always use, were these moons. And because they were so advanced, and their objective, they didn't play around, was to create life, to make that was very serious to them, to make sure life kept going. So they would ride one of these moons into planets that were ready to be developed. And then that moon, being encased with all of the things that are necessary for a planet to begin to its generation process, would serve to be the main component to cause generation. Okay? So notice how, so all the DNA, all the encodings, the language, the programming that makes like a snail come out during the day, but not or out at night, but not during the day, or at dawn, but not in the middle of the day, so it gets just burned up. The thing that makes a dolphin come out of the water, or a whale come out of the water, take a breath. You know, all the beings that are not functioning on what we have, which is we can control many of our senses. Actually, we can control all of them if you get to that stage. But animals can't. So they're on some, in a sense, overmind is what I call it. The overmind. Now, what the overmind is on this ship, and this gets into Dr. York's teaching. This is a blend of everyone's teaching, because everyone was getting a piece of it, but they didn't understand completely what the transcription was. It took the Dogon master 30 years to figure out his own customs. So imagine somebody else trying to come in and try to figure this whole thing out. So this craft on board of it, on the board was a database, which you can call this technology in a sense, but on a way futuristic level, of what's called an overmind. And what an overmind does is it's what gives out those signals and those instincts of what you're supposed to do to basically keep reproducing until you learn how to do that yourself. Okay? And so this is why when this particular craft fell into the hands of what we're perceiving as the darker forces, they had control over the planet because they had control over a craft that has an overmind on it. So do you see how like one thing is kind of leading to another here? So just to let you understand, I have to introduce the third character, which was the birth of what Leb created, which was known as the jackal. Now let me give you all of the jackal's names. The jackal's name is Ja or Yao. The jackal is a lion and a snake, because his mother is a lion and a snake. Okay, so remember, she's a lioness and she has a fish body. So what is her son gonna have? He's gonna have the same characteristics, but so when you see the cognate of what they call Yaldabaoth, which is Sophia's son, he's a lion snake. Now, his confusion is one. First, he was created, or it was created. Now, just to understand, so you understand its sexual gender, it is also hermaphroditic. It also has both, it can generate male and female, but it is primarily male.
Okay.
You see, so this is very important for you to understand in all your research and your studies and your introspections, because you are also male and female, but primarily female. So this is not odd for beings to kind of be more polarized towards one area, but still contain both poles.
Greetings of peace and love. My name is RAIMHOTEP. I'm broadcasting on behalf of the number 13, SignsAstrology.com. I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching. On this episode, I definitely have a special treat for you guys. By popular request, I've been doing a lot of consultations with a certain group of women, and these group of women, especially since we've transitioned into the sign and the constellation of Libra, which actually started on October 31st during the Halloween season. And since that date, a lot of women have been coming through getting consultations, and I've been reading their natal charts. And these women come from a very special region in the solar system. And in this region, they partake in what we would call same-sex love or same-sex marriage even. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, the first thing you want to do to understand this concept, and the first thing that I need to explain in order for you guys to understand this concept, is I need to talk about Pleiades, the star constellation of Pleiades. Why, you ask? Well, it's because this group of women, this very special group of women, come from this particular star constellation. This is where they originate from. If you go and research and get on the internet, or, you know, if you're into science and things of that nature, you can actually discover, and you'll find out that in Pleiades, they have Earth type of planets there. Now, scientists of this world are just now finding this out. However, this is something that the ancient Atlanteans, going into the Egyptians, and even the Lemurians knew a lot about. And they have planets also that are similar to Venus. And Venus, if you know anything about Venus and the beings on Venus, this is supposed to be called the planet of love, of divine, genuine love. This is where the region of the universe where love comes from. So anytime you have a Venus type of planet, you're dealing with the highest. The beings that come from that planet are a part of the highest aspect of the feminine principle. And the highest aspect of the feminine principle is love. So this group of women originated in this star constellation, and they started incarnating here on this planet during the times of Lemuria. And I talked a little bit about this in my video I did on Lemuria. And Lemuria was a feminine-based society where women made all of the decisions. Women were the scientists. Women were the artists. Women were responsible for progress and furthering creation. Now, when you think about the concept of relationships, because it's going to get a little bit interesting as I go into the video, the concept of relationships, the reason why we have them here in this world and the reason why we even need them is because this is how we progress. You progress and you graduate here in the matrix and here on this planet based upon your ability to relate to other people. And relationships are ruled by Libra. So in order for you to be a good, I guess you could say a good person, and in order for you to live to your fullest potential is basically predicated upon your ability to relate and to correspond with different types of people. So the highest aspect of this coming from this planet, because we call this planet Mother Earth, the highest aspect of this was actually created by women. And Thoth is another part of this video that I have to cover, because you have to understand Thoth as a man, because it's going to be males watching this video. And if you want to understand what I'm going to say about this and why I do agree with these women, you know, partaking in same-sex relationships, because you have a lot of males that don't agree with this. And you do have a lot of females too, a lot of old school females that do not agree with women partaking in same-sex relationships. And this is because these women are not, their souls are not, and these males, their souls are not as old, and they don't go back to the times of this particular era that I'm speaking of. This was a different time on this planet. It's very new on this planet where males and females interact and have relationships like an Adam and Eve type of relationship. This type of culture, because that's actually what it is very new. And it's dominating now, but it's actually dying, as you can see. And then there's a war going on between these type of beings and then other beings that may be a little bit younger. So the beings that are more younger, they're more so into heterosexual relationships, is what you would call it, things of that nature. And there's nothing wrong with that. Here on this channel, I come from the energy of Thoth. And Thoth was an arbiter. And Thoth basically negotiates and tries to bring peace between groups of people that may be at war. So Thoth was always like a middleman. He always walked the middle path. And the only way that we're going to advance and make it into the deeper aspects of the shift is if we accept these group of, especially women. I'll talk about the male aspect more so in another video, because I want to channel it under a different energy. But the only way that we're going to accept, I guess, and the only way we're going to advance into the feminine principle is we're going to have to learn how to accept different types of beings. That's the basis of what I cover here on this channel. When you talk about the shifts and all of that type of stuff, the whole thing about it is that new beings want to come onto this planet. And some of these beings, there's a lot of different type of beings out there. But this particular group of beings that I'm talking about, they don't interact and they don't do things and see things the way that, a lot of the younger souls see things, which are part of the Adam and Eve cult, which is really part of the cult of religion. And this cult was really based upon male patriarchy, no matter how you look at it, because of the fact that a woman being up under a man, and in a normal relationship, she has to submit herself, is what they call it in the Quran. She has to submit herself to this man. She has to give up a certain aspect of herself if she wants to be basically in congruence with the way that male and the average male's energy is. And this is because the average male's energy is based upon the Adam and Eve story, where basically the woman was the slave of the male. Essentially, when you read that story, and a lot of people in religion are going to like this because, they're like, well, that's just all sci-fi and mumbo jumbo. But that's, when you read the book, that's what it is. If you research the term wife, that's what it is. A wife is a slave. So what I'm saying here is that this group of women, they come from the Pleiades star constellation. So let me talk about them. And I'm not going to really focus too much on the negative aspects right now. And this group of women, they're called, if you research the term Pleiades, it means the dove. And if you research the dove is the number one symbol when we talk about love, divine love. And these women, they are called the 7 sisters of Pleiades. This is the actual mythological story that we will use to help you to understand how these women are. Because these women were like sisters. And a lot of males don't understand the love that sisters have for each other. Like women, this is sistering type of love, when women just have joy in making clothes together, and women have joy in maybe even sleeping in the same bed together, watching television together, and things of that nature. When we think about female relationships, same-sex female relationships being together, we always think about sex. A lot of times, men and a lot of women, like I said, do this, and a lot of males. However, if you really are around a lot of these women and you start to study a lot of these women, if you spend time with them, these women that are from that particular region where their souls may have originated there, you'll find out that they're not in these relationships a lot of times just to get off and to get an orgasm, and just a lot of times it has really nothing to do with sex. It's a certain energy that they need. And a lot of times they don't even understand themselves. The reason why they don't understand themselves is because it's not embraced in this society. Nobody's really talking about the women that came from Pleiades, that originated in Earth type of planets during that time. So what happened is that during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria, and even in early Egyptian days, this is early Egyptian, pre-dynasty, these type of women were more popular. This type of cult was more popular. But what happened was that once, during the time of Akhenaten, and during the time when patriarchy started to take over, this group of women, they began to take out this type of woman. They began to suppress this type of woman. Why? Because love is the ultimate magic. Like, you talk about magic and what's the highest form of it, there's different forms of magic. But love is the highest form of magic. And in order for male patriarchy, in order for the magic of male patriarchy to work, they had to suppress this type of divine love. So what happened was that these women stopped incarnating as much on this planet once male patriarchy took over. So we lost the knowledge of this type of women. And during the time, I say around 1980, or really after 1972, which is when the star seeds first started coming in, this is when these type of women begin to come back to the planet. And this is why a lot of women that are born pre-1972, and even some born after that, don't really have a really good understanding of this. They think this is totally like you're infidel if you believe in this type of thing. And that's okay if that's what those type of women believe, because there are certain type of beings. Those women that believe in heterosexual relationships, they are a certain type of a being as well. We have to accept them as well. We can't knock them as well, because I'll do another video on that as well. Like, that's a certain type of a woman that does see the strength in a man, and that does want to be up under the authority of a male. There is a certain type of woman like that. They call it the old school women nowadays, because a lot of these younger women, I do consultations with them all day, and most of them, they have this in their natal charts. A lot of them are curious about it. Some of them are virgins when it comes to even dealing with males. Some of them never even really had a relationship with a male. They say when they were born, they never really had an inclination, naturally though, through their nature, to really be with a male and be up under the authority of a male. Some of them may have experienced being with a male sexually a few times or whatever, but they're most comfortable when they're up under the rulership, or not really the rulership, but when they're in a relationship with a woman. This is how they're most comfortable. Now, it's a flip side to that. I'm going to talk about the flip side of it, because when you get into the sexual aspect, that's when it gets tricky, because that's when the control factors can come in at. Even when you're dealing with women that are in the same-sex relationships amongst women. There's a flip side to that, and as thought, I have to talk about the opposite side. I have to talk about both sides. So the opposite side to that is that you get into bed, no matter how you look at it, and this is even with males and females, and even when two males get into bed and do whatever they do, the thing is that there's always the alpha, and then there's always the beta. There's always the dominant, and then there's always the one that is in submission to the dominant. And that's what a lot of people don't really want to address on that aspect. A lot of women, even, they get into these relationships with these women. A lot of these women are more so trying to be like men. Why? Because they may have been hurt by their father. They may have never really had a male in their life, or they may resent males. So then they go and they prey on females the same way males do. And they get into these relationships with women just to break their self-esteem, just to control this woman, because they may want to get some money out of this woman because she has a good job, or they want to get something out of this woman. So they'll bring that male patriarchal mentality into a relationship. So don't get me wrong, male patriarchy is still thriving even amongst women, because if it wasn't, you wouldn't see women, these certain types of women, dressing up like males or wanting to look like males and wearing jeans, and they may have a dildo that they keep with them because they don't have a phallus. So they keep a dildo with them like at all times, because they want to feel like a man. This is how men are. They have a penis with them at all times. So why not keep my dildo with me or whatever? So I know what goes on. I've spoke to women on a lot of different levels on this level. And these type of women, they have a cycle. They still have a cycle. So even though you're dressing up like a male, you still bleed like a woman. So why are you trying to portray yourself and act like a male? So don't get me wrong. RAIMHOTEP is not, I'm not necessarily for the primitive aspects of same-sex relationships. I can't endorse that, but I do understand the nature of what's going on, and I have to address the nature of what's going on here in this video. So a lot of these women are coming back now on this planet, and a lot of them are confused because they're coming back and they don't know themselves, and this is new to them. This whole plan and the way of working is new to them. So they may take on, and they may think, well, if I like women or whatever, some of them will be like what we call in the streets like a butch. This is what I call it. Up north, I'm from Ohio, we used to call it butches. And some of them, they want to be like a butch, which is like a female that wants to act like a male. You know what I'm saying? You have that aspect. And then you have some of them, though, that are like feminine. You would look at them like, wow, she's beautiful. And lo and behold, you don't know this, but she doesn't have any type of interest in being really with a male. Why? Because she really doesn't understand males and things of that nature. And she comes from a place, it's more natural for her to understand females because of the 7 sisters of Pleiades. You really need to research that story or whatever to really understand where I'm coming from in this particular aspect of this video. So it could get really interesting. It could get really interesting. The thing is that these women and these men or whatever that are in these relationships, they really need to, like, I guess you could say, study more about themselves, learn more about themselves, and they need to maybe even embrace, it needs to be a new type of male that needs to come on the scene, is what I'm getting at. And this new type of male that comes on the scene has to be more of the Thoth type. I don't want to talk about Thoth again. Because if you notice the symbols of Thoth in ancient Kemet, he was always holding, a lot of times he was always holding his Ankh, I believe in his left hand, and the Ankh represents the womb. It represents the womb. And he was always holding his rod, or what was called the was, in the right hand. And the rod represents the phallus, or the penis. And the womb and the phallus are both magical tools. And the thing is that if a male that really is going to be successful in this new energy is going to have to kill the male patriarchy. That's going to have to go out the window, trying to dominate, control women, like the whole pimp mentality where you whoop a woman's ass when she gets out of line because she's like, you're losing control of her, so you got to like scare her and put this fear in her. So you got a lot of males they want to get hands on and put their hands on them. That's going out the window, and the Thoth type of males are going to have to come on the scene. And the Thoth type of male is one, because a lot of times he's depicted as being a hermaphrodite. I've talked about this in certain videos. He's a hermaphrodite, not a hermaphrodite. And a hermaphrodite is, he's a male, very much a male, but he may have a few body parts on him, female body parts. Why did they draw him like that? The Egyptians drew him like this. This is not RAIMHOTEP didn't draw him like that. It was the ancient Egyptians. And a lot of people out here, they talk about Egypt, and a lot of old school people too, but they don't like touching that. So they don't want to go into the symbols or what these symbols believe, like what these symbols were about. You got a lot of the old school teachers that come from the African type of culture, and the whole like culture of like fuck homosexuals, and that's just some punk shit and all of that, and they like knock all of that instead of like really reaching out and trying to teach people into a different culture and a way of dealing in relationships. And that's what I'm about to get into in a second. But the Thoth type of male has to come on the scene, and the Thoth type of male is one who understands his feminine nature just as much as his masculine nature, because even as a male you have to understand that your feminine nature and your masculine nature. Thoth was the head, he was the head Ogdo. There's a system in ancient Egypt that's much older than the Ennead system, which is the system of 9 deities, which goes more into male patriarchy and more modern, the way we deal in modern relationships. That's the Ennead system. You can research that. But Thoth was he was a part of the Ogdo system. He was the head of the Ogdos, were those beings that ruled in the waters in Lemuria. And I talk about this in my Lemuria video, so I won't go too much into it here. But the thing is that when those 7 sisters from Pleiades came to this planet, that represents those women that came from this planet, and they came with Thoth. So they still came with a male. Don't get it twisted. There were males in that constellation, but there weren't as many, because of the fact that a male is nothing but a genetic defect of a female. The average male nowadays is a genetic defect and a part of an experiment, that's right, of a female. And you know, the master teacher, Dr. Malachi York, talked about this in depth. This is why males they have nipples, but they don't have full breasts. They can't breastfeed their children. They have certain organs that a woman has. However, they can't use them the way that a woman uses them, so which makes them, I'm not going to say they're inferior just because of they're a defect, but that type of male served a purpose. The reason why they would make those males back then, in the times of Lemuria, a male would only be created in a laboratory for certain purposes. A male was like a soldier, a warrior, this type of male that we are now, like the primitive, strong, alpha, dominant type of male that, rules over things. And like, males are warriors. That's why they say men are from Mars, because we're supposed to be representing the strength. So that type of male had a purpose, but these were your soldiers, though. They weren't really too high up on the food chain back then. Now, the Thoth type of male, which is a different type of male, was a lot more higher up, because these were the magicians. So this was the type of male that took part in the experiment when they wanted to bring a new male on the scene, or a group of males, to protect the land from different beings that may invade and things of that nature. So you needed a warrior type of male. You do need that. That's very much needed. So it's about the acceptance of certain beings. So now the Thoth type of male has to come back on the scene, and a new type of doctrine when it comes to relationships is going to have to be embraced. What I mean by that, well, right now you have basically a relationship as a man and a woman. They get together, they buy a house, they like they date each other first, they like each other, they have sex, maybe they have a baby first, or whatever. However the situation goes, they end up trying to make it a family, and they end up trying to partner up, and they end up trying to make it work. And it usually works for a while, and then it gets rocky. A lot of times the male doesn't like the female's homegirls. They say she spends too much time with her homegirls. Her homegirls turning her against me, man. Like, I don't trust him. That type of stuff comes on the scene. The male, he goes out and starts getting more females, because he's dissatisfied, and the woman, she calls that cheating. Oh, he's a cheater. He cheated on me. He went out and got other women or whatever. And the thing is that, yeah, you did cheat. And your homegirls, it's like, they're right. Everything that's happened is right. Your homegirls are getting in the way of this relationship. But the thing is that it's your mentality. See, if you embraced a different type of way to relate to one another, if you guys did that, relationships could go a lot better. And that's what I'm going to kind of introduce now. Like, and this comes from, the only way I can really explain it to you, because the only way it's been kind of successful is if you understand the culture of the pimping thing. I know a lot of people hate when I talk about this, but I have to talk about this, because this is the only really visual that we have right now to really help you to understand a little bit about it, because that's still even primitive, because there's a lot of male patriarchy is heavy in pimping. They beating their women and all of that, but I'm talking about certain aspects of it. And in the Bible, it's demonstrated too, but we haven't seen it demonstrated like that. So in the pimping thing, and then I'll take it up on another level and talk about it in the Bible. But in the pimping thing, a male has what's called a bottom bitch. And a bottom bitch basically is like his main woman. She gets all the rights, like essentially like she gets everything. Like she's not the one out there selling her ass, and she's not doing all the work. And she's the main one. She's the queen. She's upheld. She's put on the throne. And I'm using this terminology, so those people that are religious and kind of sensitive, just bear with me here, because I'm using this terminology to relate to a group of people. So you have the bottom bitch or whatever, and she's put up on the throne or whatever, and that's the main woman. However, the bottom bitch, if you study the old times of pimping, she would be the one that would help him to find other women. She was the one that would go out fishing for the women that's going to do the dirty work, which is going around and sleeping with the Johns and things of that nature. So the concept of that is like they would all live a lot of times in a house together or something like that, or they would live, or what would be like a stable. Sometimes they call it a stable, but they would live together in a situation, in a relationship situation, and the bottom bitch controlled the other women. Now we could take it up a notch and talk about it in the Bible. In the Bible, you have, like, especially when you study like Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, you talk about like Solomon had all of these different wives, right? Like how did he control all these women? You wonder, like, how in the hell did this man have like 50 different women? I don't even know the number. I think it was like 50 different wives. And how did he control all of these women? How was he able to stay in control as a man? And it's because the Queen of Sheba was she was the queen or whatever. She would go out and get what you would call concubines, because he had concubines as well. So not only did he have wives, because he had wives, and a wife is basically like, she controls the household. That's pretty much how it goes. Like everything, even to a point where she controls even the man in the household. Like the house is the woman's place. This is how we were taught. So you get a house with a woman, that's her place. The male, his job is to control the outer aspects of making sure money comes in, bills getting paid, regulating things of that nature. That's his job. But the woman, as far as her duties, is to control the household and how things go, and making sure that things are regulated correctly. But a woman back in the biblical days was allowed to have what's called concubines, or was allowed to recruit concubines for the male. And the concubines actually were slaves really for the women, or they worked for the women. A lot of times the concubines were a lot younger. The wife was a lot older. Like a wife was like, maybe, say for instance, let's put it in layman terms, a wife may have been in her 40s, and then the concubine may be like 20s, younger women. So of course younger women always naturally look up to older women anyway. So the reason why this was like a way that you build human potential and you build human character through the wife being able to recruit younger women and putting the younger women up under her, and the wife controlled the younger women until they got old enough, and then they would become a wife to another man, or maybe to that same man. And when they became a wife, they was given a certain amount of land, and that was their kingdom, because a woman's kingdom is the land. That's her kingdom. The male's kingdom is the waters, going out into commerce, exchanging, going and dealing with foreign nations. Males were more diplomats. So Solomon, a lot of times, he may not have been at home. A lot of times he may have been out doing business, doing trade, and things of that nature. So these type of relationships are not seen. Even in Islam, when you talk about polygamy, polyandry, and things of that nature, especially polygamy, not really polyandry, but when you talk about the system, because polygamy is the institution of a male having more than one wife or whatever, that's not even done correctly. Because a lot of times you have a man that's living in a house with 7 women or 3 women or whatever, and he's basically just sleeping with all these women, and he doesn't have a lot of money, and it's not even been done correctly. No woman is put up to a higher stature. It's just all of these women are pretty much equal, and the man is just trying to rule over all of these women. And what's going to happen is that these women are going to overthrow this male, and they're going to take over, because there's no way in the world that a male can deal with a lot of women like that without getting emotional and wanting to put his hands on them, because women are very emotional, and when they come together, like when you leave and go to work, they're gonna come together and plan on how they're gonna get out of the situation, overthrow you, and take you over. So it was never supposed to be done like that. It was never. It's a system of the way you do these things. However, the normal way, which is I call the caveman way, is what we do now. Is when just a male and a woman get together and they move into a house and have children and try to make that work. That's not really working anymore either, because the male naturally wants to go out and get other women, and the woman wants to go out and hang out with her females, her homegirls, and maybe even possibly experience situations with other males. And a lot of times a man ain't dealing with that because his ego, and he's thinking about sex. See, and that's what the thing is, that we're still stuck on below the belly. Every time we think about a man having more than one woman, we thinking about, oh, he's gonna put his phallus into another woman. I can't stand that. I can't even think about that. Or, oh, she's gonna open up her legs to another man. And until you get over that and master those emotions of sex in general, because a lot of times to do this, you may not really be having a lot of sex still. Just because you have more than one woman doesn't mean you need to be having a lot of sex with them. What if you lived in a household where it was your mother, your aunt, your sister, and your wife? You're not having sex with all them. You better not be. However, you still got to be in that situation because of the fact that you may have to live like that for economic purposes. And living like that may help you to build a bigger economic kingdom living like that. So what I'm here to teach, and what I'm really, my final words on this topic will just be that those type of women have a place in the society. They like to be with women or whatever and things of that nature. They have a place in the society, but it's not until we really start to relate to one another differently, it's going to just still remain primitive, and it's just going to be like two women getting together trying to do what a male and a female, when they get together, do. And it's going to be like that. And those women, that you guys that are like that, the 7 daughters of Pleiades is what I call you. You women that are like that are much more. Like, it's much more than just you getting with a woman and just being with her. You're supposed to be a part of a team or a group to build up a kingdom, an economic kingdom. So that's what I'm on. You're supposed to be like a partner in a business type of environment. If you're going to decide that you're going to move in with someone, and you decide that you're going to be in a relationship with them, and you guys are going to move in together, though, it's one thing to date and have sex, free, loose sex. I mean, you guys do what you do. Like, I don't really too much get into that. You know what I'm saying? But if you're talking about as far as like really building something with somebody, whether it's somebody of the opposite sex or not, you need to first define what type of being you are. And then after you do that, you need to, when you partner up with that other person, you need to form some type of agreement, contract even, to let them, the other party, know, like, yo, I'm this type of being, and at some point, like, say for instance, you're a male, and at some point you're going to want to get you may want her to have some concubines, or you may even want to get you another quote unquote wife. I use that term very loosely, or main partner, let's just call it that. You may want to get you another main partner. You got to look at, every time you get you another wife, quote unquote, another main partner, you have to look at it like that's the board of directors in a business. So all of those wives, they're equal to you. They're your equals. You're not over them. They're not, you know what I'm saying? You can't play all these manipulate. These are your equals. And they get shares in the company, and they get just as much in the say so in the company. You guys might have to set up a voting structure or something like that. But they get just as much of a say so as someone else. Now, if she goes out and gets concubines, these are women that may be up under her. You may have certain rights to those women or whatever. However, that's between her. The concubines are kind of like employees. And you may be like, well, that's not fair. Like, everybody should be partners, but life ain't fair. Because a lot of you guys are employees for companies. You don't get no say-so on what happens, and you're not on the board of directors of that company. You don't have no say-so on what happens at the top. A lot of you guys are employees of the United States Corporation. You have no say-so on what happens at the top. What happens in the House, the Congress, and the Senate, when they meet, you guys have no say-so. This is why they still get paid and you don't. A lot of times, because like if the government shuts down or something like that, they still get paid. It's because they're at the top. They're on the board. Why? Because they may have took the risk to get to that position that they're at. You study the term entrepreneur, it means one who takes risks. So why am I talking about business in a relationship video? Because if you get in and decide you're going to move in with someone, it's a business. That's what it becomes. This is why you get tax deductions and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? When you fill out your taxes and things like that, and you have a wife or something, you guys get certain tax benefits because you're married and things like that. So I embrace same-sex marriage, actually, because of the fact that I think economically it can go far, because I think that's going to be the introduction into bringing in polygamy the institution of polygamy. So this is why I embrace it. Like, I definitely think it's good or whatever. I think that it's something that's needed because people need to break the spell of just this man and this woman being together, because you're not going to get anywhere economically like that. That's slavery. Like, and I mean, I'm here to tell that's for a lot of the older heads to say, well, that's just gay shit, and you know, and just two males being together, that's a butt boy, that's some gay shit. And I'm not for. See, that's the thing, when you start talking about the sex or whatever, like, I'm never gonna let a nigga fuck me in the ass. You know what I'm saying? I'm just gonna keep it real with you, right up, straight up. Like, I'm not for that at all. Like the male aspect of homosexuality, and even a lot of times the female aspect of the sexual aspect, that's the most primitive, dumbest part of it, is because a lot of times you guys are doing it for strictly for pleasure anyway, and somebody's gonna dominate the other person in bed anyway. So if you basing a relationship all around some sex thing, you missing the whole point of what you guys could be doing together and what you guys could be building together. So this video is not centered around the sexual aspect of it. I want to make that clear. Like, it's not centered around saying, like people could just go out here and get fucked in the ass freely, and two women can like take her dildo and she can, you know, fuck this woman with her dildo, or, you know, control her, manipulate her. I'm not talking about all of that. I mean, I know that's going to happen when you guys get into bed, but my saying is just like the old master teacher, Dr. Malachi York, said, because he's the only one that really even opened up the door to a lot of this stuff. That's why I keep quoting him in this video. He said, what you do in the bed is your business. And that's right. That's your business. Like, if you choose to get in the bed and she's dominating you and doing all of this stuff or whatever, and you wonder why you got low self-esteem, that's on you, because you with a woman that's trying to act like a man, and she's doing the stuff like a man, and she's doing the same shit that a male would do to you. So that's up to you to decide how you're going to perform sexually. But I'm saying the culture of it is what I want to address, because there are a group of people out there that are seriously a part of that culture because of their star seeds. And this is, you have to teach this type of information to the star seeds. So that's my brief segment on same-sex relationships, the daughters of Pleiades, and the type of new males that have to come on the scene. Now, to the males, you're just not saying you have to be a punk and just let a woman take anything from you, because if you notice, or you have to take anything, I'm sorry, from a woman, just take all her shit and all of that. Like, nah, because I mean, they're going to challenge you when you're in that situation. Oh yeah, a woman is going to challenge you and test you, and you are going to have to check her. But that doesn't mean you have to put your hands on her. You may check her verbally. You may check her another kind of way. There's tactics you got to use. You have to be a mental being. I'm not going to go into a lot of the tactics here, but we can talk about that in a consultation or something. But there is tactics that you got to use to check your woman. See, the pimps, they knew it. The concept of checking them, they just slap them. You know what I'm saying? But that's primitive. I mean, that's like actually going against a person's free will. So you have to be very careful karmically too when you get in these situations, because you can create a lot of negative karma for yourself if you don't perform correctly in the situation. My honest opinion is that a male that's in this situation has to be, definitely got to be 33 or over. It has to be a male that's reached his maturity to even get into a situation like that. Because like these younger males trying to do it, you 21 and 22, you don't even understand. You still got milk on your breath. You don't even understand a woman's cycle, let alone you can't even produce. You don't even know how to self-produce. Like, it's a lot of women out there, you don't even know how to self-produce. You got to remember, these women, I didn't even cover this part, but these women were called the daughters of Pleiades because they self-produced. They partook in self-fertilization, meaning that they didn't need a man to get pregnant. They were that in tune. They didn't even have cycles. They mastered even having, they didn't bleed, a lot of them, when they were able to have children, because they were scientists. See, Thoth, he represents art, science, magic, and judgment. Very important. These are all Libran traits, actually. So Thoth was an artist, very creative. He was a writer, very creative. He was a magician. He was an alchemist, but he was also a judge. He was really good. He had a good sense of judgment. And these younger males, you guys aren't good judges yet, because you guys don't know enough about life. You can't be a good judge unless you know a lot about life. You really need to be older than 33 years old. They say, some people say 42. You couldn't get into the priesthood till you were 42 years old, according to the mystery system. The reason why is because you haven't experienced a lot of things yet. When you get 40, you get a certain maturity and a certain experience about yourself. So I'm introducing it because I think that it's good. I'm all about building human culture and building human nature and developing human nature, and I think it's a good practice. I myself, like I said on Facebook, I was talking to a couple the other day, and like, I haven't found the Empress for me yet. However, I know that the Empress for me is going to definitely have to be someone that's open to this. So I probably will end up being with one of the daughters of Pleiades, because I mean, the old school way doesn't work. We know that doesn't work. Look at this world. If it worked, how did this world get into such a shit bag that it is? It's because people think they know some shit, But it's all, you make all your judgments off of being religious. Everything that you do is based on what the religion said, because Adam and Eve did this, and all religions believe that Adam and Eve were the first people on earth. The Muslims believe it, the Christians believe it, even the Jews believe it, that Adam and Eve was the first people on earth and everybody came from them. And you know that story's bullshit, because if that was the case, then how in the hell? So that means everybody partook in incest, and they were just sleeping with their sisters and their brothers and things of that nature. And I'm not even against that, but that's what I'm saying. But you guys are against incest. That's what I'm saying. Like, you guys are against incest and you knock that, but then you say Adam and Eve was the first people. You need to think about the things that you're saying and think about the paradigm that we're up under. And that's all I want to get out on this video, because I know a group of females wanted me to do this video, and I told them, like, when I do it, you know it's going to be controversial, but I got to do it. I'm RAIMHOTEP. I'm Mr. Controversy anyway, so I hope this helped. I may do a part 2 if it need be, if, you know, I'm reading the comments and see how the comments are as far as, like, that it sparked thought. Does more need to be talked about? I can go into different aspects of the concubine, go into different, like, what is a kingdom? You talk about people talking about their kings, queens, and all of that. Like, what is that? What is a queendom? So I can go a little bit deeper, you know, if need be, but I'll go ahead and stop for now. Thank you guys for listening. I thank you guys for watching. And until we meet again, I'm going to leave you in Namaste.